But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
And the aliens would mind meld and give them the technology. They're bad aliens. So are you surprised that Nazis were influenced by demons?
No, if demons are real, I would definitely think they'd be on the side of the Nazis.
Yeah.
McDonald's is connected to the Clintons. They chop up the bodies and put them into the sausage and hamburgers. People are being cannibalized. Look it up.
And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful, you know?
It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
Welcome to Yeah Nah Pasaran, a show about fascism and its gravediggers. I'm Cam Smith.
I'm Andy Fleming.
And this week we are joined from Kamala Harris's United States by our American correspondent, Jason Wilson. Thanks for coming on, Jason.
Thanks for having me again, gents.
I guess just to local news first, Jacob Hassant of the National Socialist Network was recently found guilty of being a very naughty boy. In his pre-sentencing hearing, his defense lawyer did tell the court that not only is he not that naughty a boy, he's a sweet, sensitive boy who has even won non-Nazi poetry competitions. However, upon investigation, it was discovered that the non-Nazi poetry competition he won was from the publisher Antelope Hill. Jason, could you tell us a little bit about the non-Nazi publisher Antelope Hill?
So I would say of Antelope Hill that if you're saying they're not Nazis, it's difficult to know what you would say was a Nazi or who you would say was a Nazi. I mean, they're white nationalists at the very least. I mean, they may not be. I think extremism researchers are pretty careful about who they say is a neo-Nazi, but certainly the folks at Antelope Hill are white supremacists, white nationalists. They publish books by historical Nazis, including Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and who's the guy from Belgium who was in the SS and then died in exile in Spain. Like Nazis, people who were Nazis in World War II, who fought for the Nazis. They publish their stuff. I know about Antelope Hill because when I was at the Southern Poverty Law Centre, I was part of a team who actually exposed who they were. So Vincent and Sarah Cucciara are a married couple who seem to be the prime movers, and these folks all met at Pennsylvania State University. They were part of a pro-Trump group there, and they just went, it seems, deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And they now live in small town Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley, and they run their far-right publishing company there, and they're also close with whatever remains of the National Justice Party, which is a political party that doesn't run candidates, doesn't do any of the normal political party stuff, but they have rallies where they all show up wearing uniforms. They grew out of the Right Stuff, a podcasting network, which was part of that alt-right wave back in the day. But yeah, he's not entering. Mr. Hassant is probably, I doubt that he's entering that poetry competition randomly. I don't see it as, it's not like it's being run by a politically neutral literary magazine, right? This is a white nationalist outfit that sell white nationalist and Nazi books, esoteric Hitlerist books by white Russian counter-revolutionaries, books by fascist sympathizers in the UK. Like, they're the real deal. Their purpose, their reason for being is to sell and resuscitate, rehabilitate a lot of these historical figures who have rightly in the past been consigned to the dustbin of history because they represent the worst expression, elements of mass politics that anyone's ever seen. Genocidal, murderous mass politics. So, yeah, I don't know if his lawyer should have gone there, really. I don't know. Was that something that came up in the courtroom? Was there pushback to that in the courtroom about about this being just an innocent poetry competition?
No, there wasn't.
Oh, dear.
Do they republish Ezra Pound?
I don't think they do Ezra Pound.
Okay. That's a missed opportunity.
They do a lot of contemporary neo-fascist, new right, whatever you want to call it, authors as well. So one thing I've noticed because I've been a bit of an observer of the publishing world. I did some reporting earlier in the year about a guy whose pseudonym was Lomez, turned out to be Jonathan Keeperman. And he runs an outfit called Passage Press, and he's currently organizing a book tour for Steve Saylor, who is, I don't know, you call him a neo-eugenicist, a race realist, human biodiversity is how he describes it. And they all have a similar structure in that they put a floor under their operation by picking up stuff that's either officially in the public domain or the copyright holder's not around anymore and they're probably going to be fine. So, and they don't have to pay for it, right? But yeah, and then they invest, I guess, in current contemporary far-right authors. So let's see. I'm just looking at Antelope Hill's website now because they're quite productive. They have a lot of titles now. There's always new titles. So there's a contemporary biography of D'Annunzio, the proto-fascist, by a guy called Mario Cali. I mean, contemporary with D'Annunzio. They've got, what else have they got here? Mussolini's political speeches. They've got, and they also all run these writing competitions, right? And why do they do that? I think it's because that is a way of promoting this shared culture, building a network, having people identify with this publisher as a representative of a broader far-right movement. But there's also the sense that I think perhaps that with the historical stuff, certainly, that idea of them rehabilitating these figures is very self-conscious, I think. There's this grievance that they have that all of their ideas have been censored and scrubbed from history. And the idea of themselves as being censored seems to be very important to these folks a lot of the time.
I assume they fancy themselves as intellectuals.
Oh, absolutely. And Jonathan Keeperman, a.k.a. Lomez, who runs Passage Press, I mean, he spoke at the National Conservatism Conference in the US this year, and he's making a very bold appeal in the speech he gave there that the wealthy people who we know now are in tune with these movements, who are sympathetic to them, who are willing to support them, and fund them to some extent, that they should really be in the business of providing direct support for the creativity in his version on the right, and intellectual work, which is not necessarily directed to immediate political ends. They should just be building up a right-wing culture that young men in particular can identify with and find a place in. So yeah, they're very self-consciously intellectuals and curators of culture. But honestly, it's all pretty dire stuff. If you read through any of and they all publish the results of their writing competitions.
You're not impressed?
No, it's generally pretty bad. And look, maybe that's every open call writing competition. I'm not sure. I've never run one. But I think that in most cases, the shortlisted finalists for a literary prize, the people who actually get into print generally aren't bad. But a lot of this stuff is bad. They're clearly struggling at times to fill up the pages of a volume that people might want to buy. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I see it as more of a movement building exercise than a quest for literary excellence. But I don't know. I don't think I have any more thoughts beyond that. I don't know. What do you think, Andy, Cam?
I think that if you're going to use a poem as in your sentencing hearing, you need to read the poem out.
Yeah.
You can't just say I'm a poet and I know it.
Yeah.
I want to hear the poem.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good idea. That might have somewhat undermined it as mitigation, though, I suppose.
Jason, moving from the Yerna Pasaran Arts Corner to the weather, it's currently hurricane season in the United States. I know in years past, during wildfire season, one thing you've reported on was the emergence of conspiracy theories about Antifa and people going out into wildfires and into wildfire areas and hunting these mysterious Antifas. I've seen with the recent hurricanes, there are people out there hunting FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Authority. Mm-hmm. It seems like that's a little bit of a ratcheting up from where we were at previously. What's going on there?
Well, maybe FEMA's just the final boss of Antifa, Cam. Did you ever think about that?
Anti-FEMA.
I would say that what we're seeing at the moment in Appalachia, in Western North Carolina in particular, is a ratcheting up in every possible sense of what we saw in 2020 with the wildfires in the Western United States. It's a ratcheting up of climate change-induced natural disaster. I mean, the flooding there, by all accounts and on all the footage and other evidence I've seen, was just incredible and nightmarish, and buildings washed away by mudslides, rivers flooding, people trapped. So that's one way in which it's ratcheted up. Another way in which it's ratcheted up is, as you say, from scapegoating a social movement, scapegoating a folk devil that has some relationship to a contending social movement, I guess, is maybe the best way of putting it. Scapegoating the imaginary version of anti-fascists in 2020 to an actual arm of the federal government. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a situation where you've gone from weaponizing political polarization and a history of contentious protest to where you're trying to undermine and demonize the federal government. Yeah, that seems like ramping things up a little. The other thing is that there's a lot less standing in the way of concerted disinformation campaigns like this at this point. Local media, local newspapers, local broadcasters are much diminished because their business model has been eaten by the internet, particularly Google, Facebook, those kinds of companies, who courts here are now describing as monopolists. The federal government, the Department of Justice, is going to ask a judge to break Google up into its constituent parts because of its anti-competitive behavior. So there's no local media. Their business model has been destroyed. And as much as I have mostly despised Twitter, or before Elon Musk took it over, it did serve as some like a central node where good information was available if you knew how to look for it. But now it's an arm of the disinformation campaign, effectively. Elon Musk has turned it into an accelerant, a weapon to be used in the delegitimization of not only government, but of the sorts of social solidarity that at the best of times appears in the face of natural disaster, the reflexive mutual aid that you often see in natural disasters. I mean, it's targeting that as well. And if I didn't know better, I would say that Musk and Twitter, in league with the far right in general and the Republican Party, which is increasingly indistinct from the far right. If I didn't know better, I'd say that all of those folks were collectively trying to make things worse in order to create political difficulties for for Donald Trump's electoral opponents. So it's bad. I mean, it's worse, I think, than 2020 because there's just not much that you feel like is countervailing it particularly effectively. And the cacophony of disinformation feels louder than efforts at fact-based reporting at this point. So it's not good. And I obviously do worry about what is going to happen in the immediate aftermath of the election and going forward. Because it just seems like that complex, that network of actors is really willing and possible, maybe able to destroy any semblance of a responsive government that's left after neoliberalism and all the rest of it. They're prepared to destroy whatever's left just in order to get past the next election. And when if they win that, Trump's openly talking about authoritarian rule. and going after his political opponents and, like mass deportations, all the rest of it. You've heard all that stuff. So, yeah, it's bad. The disinformation campaign in context is very, very bad. It's not good. It's probably my number one concern at this point.
Speaking of the Republicans, Jason, in your reportage you've documented multiple links between persons who might otherwise be regarded as being somewhat politically marginal, but they're increasingly emerging into the centre of the party. So one question I have is, how far right do you think the Republicans can go? And secondly, what do you make of the fact that the Harris campaign has embraced or been embraced by a number of dissident Republicans? And do you think that will help or hinder her campaign or her mission to steal Trump's thunder in November?
How much further right can the Republicans go? Well, it's a good question. I mean, rhetorically, like Donald Trump during this election campaign, and I would say that he's become more strident. He hasn't moderated his closing message. He hasn't taken his foot off the gas in the last month, right? Like he arguably did there are people who say he did in 2016 a little. I mean, I don't know if I noticed that, but let's grant that for argument's sake. I mean, he's put his foot on the gas in the last couple of weeks. I mean, like I said, he's talking about mass deportations. He's talking about allowing the police free rein to have a violent crackdown on criminals. Yeah, he's characterizing immigrants as criminal, and I don't see that he's making any distinction even for whatever, like a good type of immigrant, right? He's saying that Haitians are eating cats and dogs, and he's also been talking about genes and immigrants polluting the blood of the nation. I mean, I just don't see a lot of difference between that and whatever classical interwar fascist rhetoric. I just don't see it. I mean, it could even be maybe Mussolini didn't get to that point for a little while. It seems like as bad as that. I don't know what you guys think about that, but it seems to have all of the hallmarks of, yeah. And he's also been talking in the last week or so, well, not just in the last week or so, but increasingly every speech about internal enemies. I mean, it just seems like a textbook. It's almost like he's been reading histories of fascism and making notes. It's just extraordinary. So, in rhetorical terms, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what would further right be? It's hard to know. Maybe when he's president, and he starts like talking about individual internal enemies, press conferences and stuff. Maybe that would be worse. But I don't see how much worse it could get in terms of being proximate to those terrible, terrible, terrible historical examples. And yeah, as a result of that, there's this kind of right-wing UK website called Unheard. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
It seems to mostly come out of anti-trans, maybe COVID stuff, that whole mindset, that 2021 mindset. I don't know. That's where it seems to come from. And as I understand it, it's bankrolled by a rich guy, and he's also bought The Spectator and all that stuff. I've written lately about Steve Saylor, and to me, it's incredible that he was going to speak at a university in Florida, the New College of Florida. He was going to be an honored guest speaker there. Steve Saylor is a blogosphere, eugenics, race and IQ guy. He was fringe. He's never not been fringe. You know what I'm saying? And Unheard had this article today where this reporter was saying, in a complimentary way, and she had interviewed him and had really muted criticism, maybe said he's had some controversial takes, but is he entering the conservative mainstream? And it's a fair question, because I think he is. I think that the discussion of race and IQ and race and criminality like the stuff that you just would have seen as just extremely damaged rhetoric, like the stuff that Republicans. You remember that guy Jason Richwine got fired from the Heritage Foundation because it was discovered that he had written a dissertation with all of this race and IQ stuff, and he had to leave his job. It's impossible to imagine the Heritage Foundation firing Jason Richwine in 2024. And there's no penalty for like associating yourself with Steve Saylor. There's no, it seems to be something that maybe you can own the libs, so maybe you should do it. I feel like that I guess it's slightly apart from electoral politics, but people like Malcolm and Simone Collins are representative of a re-entry of eugenics and eugenic thinking and into public discourse as something that can be legitimately discussed. I feel like no politician in my lifetime could have said the stuff that Donald Trump has said. I mean, I don't know that the stuff that David Duke said back in the 1990s was worse than this. I think he was being a bit more careful than Trump is at this point. So that's that. Can they go further right? I don't know. I don't know what further right would be. I just, historically, in terms of the alternatives that are out there, like there's no one further to the right than Donald Trump's rhetoric, at least in a party of government, potentially in any liberal democracy that I'm aware of. Could be, maybe, but I'm not aware of it. And I don't know what that would look like. Kamala Harris is running on the center right. I think that's pretty obvious. She's running on the side of the American empire. She's running on the side of the status quo. She's running as a conservative, right? That makes sense from a certain perspective. There are former people who voted Republican in the past, maybe habitually voted Republican, who either have a genuine, principled opposition to what Trump stands for, or they find him personally repugnant. They find his style to be not something that they want to endorse, whatever, right? There's a decent pool of those voters. In particular, there's a lot of women who used to vote Republican. And she's got to win in these blue wall states of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And her campaign has made the judgment that which is probably true, right? Like that's the voters they need to pick up in order to win. And if they don't pick those voters up, they might not win, right? And it's going to be really close, whatever happens, right? And either the calculation has been made that pool of voters is bigger than the pool of progressive voters that might abandon. This is the judgment they've made. That pool of voters is going to more than offset any progressive voters who are just going to stay home because she's not saying a peep about what's going on in the Middle East. She's not really running on no part of her platform is what you would call progressive, I don't think. I mean, there might be a note or two of this more old-fashioned, tough liberal, New Deal nostalgia type stuff in there. I guess that the stuff about like paying for people to have at-home care for their sick relatives, there are bits and pieces, right? Like isolated bits and pieces. But rhetorically, I think she's running as conservative, and she's courting conservatives, and she's censoring people like Liz Cheney in her cell. And to be fair, I don't think Liz Cheney has asked for or received any particular policy settings or outcomes in return for her support. I think she just hates Donald Trump, so that's fine. But that's the campaign that she's running at this point. Is it a winning campaign? I have no idea. It doesn't seem to be as inspiring to a lot of people who maybe you would see as her natural constituency as it was when she entered the race, and seemed to be rhetorically about to present something more progressive. Picking Tim Walz, who's done a lot of bread and butter, kitchen table, whatever stuff, free lunches for schools, free lunches for kids in school, right? Marijuana liberalization, a whole lot of healthcare support aimed at LGBTQ folks, all that stuff. He's probably been about as left-wing a governor as is conceivable, really, in the American political system. But that all just seemed to go away because I guess their analysis of the election changed. And so now, yeah, I would say she's running as a conservative. And I don't know, given that Donald Trump is proposing to destroy the system of government effectively, I mean, maybe that's just something she's been forced into. I have no idea.
No, I was just thinking that one of the disadvantages she and her campaign may have is they rely on being able to mobilise voters. And whereas the Trump campaign has a seemingly relatively large number of very dedicated, even fanatical supporters who are prepared to do what it takes to assist him in being elected, the extent to which Harris is a conservative means that progressive base, which is tends younger, is less likely to want to hit the streets or make sure people are actually mobilised in order to vote.
Well, you would think so, Andy, but the evidence I've seen and the coverage I've seen, and Hugo Lowell in The Guardian has written a little bit about the trouble Trump's having with his ground game. He's outsourced all of that stuff basically to Elon Musk's PAC and to Charlie Kirk, the Turning Point USA guy, his PAC. And they're paying people to go out and canvass. They've got a very noisy bunch of supporters online, but they don't really have a ground game. And look, I think Harris, and she may be right in this. I still tend to think that she'll probably squeak it out. They'll probably win they'll hold those 3 states and maybe get Nevada and stuff. And so they'll win narrowly. I think that's where it's heading, but I don't know. I mean, don't put any money anywhere on that basis. I just think that's where it's stabilized, but we'll see. But anyway, if that's the case, maybe the calculation she's making will turn out to be correct. And I think that the calculation that the campaign has made is that the most powerful force in American politics is not Donald Trump, but the opposition to Donald Trump, right? And that's how they won in 2020, and that's how they think they're going to win now. And that goes for voters, but it also goes to there's a certain amount of energy, volunteers, ground game that comes out of people's opposition to Trump and what he represents. I also think that in general, at the moment, I mean, Trump, the Republican Party now is you have to be a Trump loyalist. And that means a lot of people have gone, including a lot of the professional consultant class. There's just a layer of infrastructure and a set of skills that is not there for Trump in the contemporary Republican Party. And he's never really... This is the best run campaign that he's probably had, I would say. Certainly in terms of advertising and all that stuff. They've pretty relentlessly and professionally hammered a few messages about Harris, but I don't think there's not the grassroots energy that's going to see some Trump volunteer knocking on your door. They just don't seem to be able to organize that kind of thing very well. And there's no one left to do that. So I think that the Democrats are still a lot better organized on the ground. They have more money, which is quite important. And and look, the stuff about the Middle East is just mystifying, right? And a lot of the policy positions that they don't take, which would be popular, it's mystifying until you realize that money is so important, and that means donors' opinions are important. And especially when you're in a tight race, I mean, it's not like she's rolling over the top of him. You need the money. And that means you have to listen to take meetings with the people who have the money. And that means they get a pretty big say in what you end up running on and what you end up doing in government. So it would have been nice, right, for Trump to, a lot of people would have liked to have seen Trump be defeated by a progressive Harris campaign, right, that was offering the substance that might lead people to be hopeful rather than just cajoling people into being hopeful. But yeah, it just hasn't worked out that way. And so, yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, I don't think much is going to change. She's going on Fox News on Wednesday night for some reason. I think that there's a performative thing here, but also she thinks that by going on Fox News, there's a bunch of Republicans who just watch Fox News. Like lots of Democrats watch Fox News. Don't ask me to explain that, but they're just the biggest cable news. They've got the biggest audience in cable news. And so she probably thinks that there are some people who that's the only way she's going to reach them. And so that's where we're at. She's really, at this point, trying to make the sale with Republicans, with a bunch of Republicans.
Now, Jason, some commentators have also suggested that the Trump campaign has too made some missteps, particularly in their selection of one J.D. Vance as his vice presidential pick. Where to begin? The guy liner? No, the recent hacking of the Trump campaign's dossier on J.D. Vance. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that and what you made of the lack of reporting on it.
It's a tough one. I mean, it's not that tough. I mean, if this guy had reached out to me with that stuff, I would have pitched stories. I would have pitched stories on the basis of getting it, just because, of course you would. But that is why I am not entrusted with making decisions on behalf of entire large media organizations, if you see what I'm saying. I think Ken Klippenstein did the right thing, no question. He got it, he put it out, and so everyone could read it. I think that's entirely appropriate.
Unredacted.
Yeah. That he possibly could have done some redactions of what do they call it? PPI? PII, personally identifying information. But that's, I mean, J.D. Vance is a rich politician. He'll be fine with his email or whatever being out there. Well, was his social security number as well? I don't know. Yeah, that was probably
it was fairly complete.
And look, I think it's not qualifying that judgment on what Ken did to say that he's on Substack now. He's trying to get attention. He's trying to get an audience, and that's all right. But it made sense on that basis as well. On the other hand, I think the Wall Street Journal did the first story on it. I think it was them, and they said, well, there's not a ton of stuff in here that's newsworthy, and the hack itself maybe is more newsworthy. So we're just going to paraphrase what's in the dossier, and we're going to try and find out how this happened, because this is attempted election interference, so we're told, by the representative of a hostile state actor, right? In the parlance of journalism and government, right? But I don't think that was an illegitimate decision either. It's not that interesting. It's not. They missed a bunch of stuff that reporters, including me, including myself, have picked up on about his edgelord past on the podcast, New Right podcast circuit, right? Like they missed a bunch of that stuff, actually. Like a lot of the stuff that's in there we already knew. I didn't see anything that was actually a huge revelation in there. So I don't think that initial thing with okay, we'll paraphrase it. We'll say that there's not much that's newsworthy in here, and also try and figure out how this happened and who's trying to mess with the election. I don't think that's illegitimate either. My own instincts are closer to Ken's, but that's because I'm a muckraker and I'm not like controlling an important journalistic institution and making decisions that are about the continuing legitimacy and whatever of that institution. Does that make sense? I don't think I can see how everyone in that situation came to the decisions that they did, and I I don't think that any of them are obviously illegitimate. But what do you two Joe Publics think about that?
I remember it came to my attention because it was removed from X, the Everything app.
Oh yeah, that actually there is a bad guy in this situation, and it's Elon Musk. But continue, yeah.
And I haven't read the full dossier. I mean, I do think it was more complete than the dossier that was compiled here in Victoria about Kelly J. Keane Minshall, which was quite small and is the subject of an ongoing court case. But I assume that, as you've indicated, there's plenty of other information about J.D. Vance and his obsession with couches and so on.
Yeah.
It's in the public domain that would perhaps, as Cam indicated, lead to questions about why Trump would have selected him, aside from his supposed working class roots and so on, and his capacity to present some alternative image to someone like Trump who was born into wealth.
Yeah, I mean, I actually went to the RNC. I mostly hung around outside and stuff. So I was there in Milwaukee when he got picked. And I think he got picked at a moment when Trump was still running against Biden. Looked like he was almost certainly going to win handily. And I think that he was picked to run up the numbers with certain kinds of voters, to own the libs a little bit, but to like cement this legacy. And I don't know, Trump, like whatever you think of Trump's politics, they're like not. He hasn't thought them through or anything. Like they're not. It's not a coherent worldview he's expressing. It's gut stuff, right? Like whatever comes into his head, he'll just say it. And in a sense, his rallies are just a window into his soul, for better or worse, right? I mean, I think Vance is more, and this isn't incompatible with being an opportunist, but he is an ideologue. He is a far-right politician. He is a committed reactionary who is, I think, in his comments, in his rhetoric, is anti-democratic, is committed to patriarchy, the patriarchal family. I don't think I'm misrepresenting the guy here. I think that's just all there in his public commentary. And all of that seemed like a good idea, I think, when Trump was just going to win. Like, he just thought he was going to win. They all thought, like, at that convention, the far right, not just the Republican Party in the room, but the far right, the entire far right online, you could see them. They were celebrating. They thought that America was going to elect handily an authoritarian administration. And I guess things changed. But, like, Vance is probably a drag, but it's hard to say how much of a drag he is on Trump. He's personally unpopular, but we'll have to wait and see, like, to see how much he actually detracted from Trump's vote. And he himself is the target of a lot of enthusiasm on the far right. I mean, to the extent that you guys are tuned into the far right in the US, you will have noticed that. I mean, he's their guy. They this whole new right formation want Vance, and they see in him someone who is sympathetic to ideas. This whole idea of repealing the 19th Amendment so women can't vote, like, that's a thing people say, and there are things that he says that are not that explicitly, but he has said things. Parents with kids should get extra votes according to how many kids they have. Stuff like that. Like, that traditional family structures should attract these rewards, extra political power, a greater say in government. And something that runs counter to democracy as we have understood it, even formal electoral democracy, right? So that's a thing that makes me, even if they lose, I mean, J.D. Vance isn't going anywhere, right? He's got all the money in the world. He's young. He's probably never going to lose to a Democrat in Ohio. He's probably never going to be primaried in Ohio. He'll be running for national office again at some point, and maybe he'll be the candidate. and maybe he'll win an election, because these elections, they're just really close. So, and he's more committed to a more coherent ideological worldview. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's surprising and troubling to me that there's less resistance, even at the level of, oh, I'm going to change my vote, to open declarations of enthusiasm for authoritarian government. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it should be as popular as it is, but that's just me being naive. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, people vote for authoritarians all the time. So, but yeah, it's such a close election, and it just seems like the two candidates are running not to change government, to change administration, to change the administration. They're running to, one campaign is running to make a significant change in the political system, which would be a significant degradation of whatever democratic accountability and liberal procedural norms still remain in that system.
Jason, you've returned to The Guardian last year. You've been writing about the far right during that period and, of course, prior to that point. And we've had some reportage on the matter in Australia recently, which I think has been flawed in some respects. So I guess in terms of your own journalistic practice, if there's anything you could advise journalists in Australia who are writing on this subject as to how to go about it in an appropriate fashion, what would it be?
So I wouldn't necessarily presume to give advice sight unseen. If I were asked for it, though, I would talk about how I approach this stuff. So journalism is ultimately premised on democracy, some level of democratic agency, right, and accountability in the service of that. So that's what journalists talk about as the public interest, and some set of liberal norms around a level of freedom of speech, of the free press, of the ability to speak one's mind, and the value, I guess, of contentious public debate. So the far right, at some point, as you get further right, like as you get into what we might call the far right or the radical right, there's a basic hostility to all of those values, right? So there's an implicit attack on those values in the far right. So, like, you don't need to be hesitant or worried about approaching that politics adversarially, right? Like, they are the ones who've chosen to be adversaries of democracy and liberalism and whatever, right? Like, that's what they've chosen. And honestly, I think that to the extent that these movements are involved in actual violence, or that there is implicit violence in their rhetoric, that they're seeking to intimidate, to chase other people from the public square, to limit other people's capacity to oppose their politics or to speak out against their politics, to victimize and marginalize people in minority groups, they're engaged in wrongdoing, to my mind. And so you can't quite assimilate it to crime reporting, but it's not it's not dissimilar either. And so the questions are, who's benefiting from financially from money questions, right? Who's financing this and who's benefiting financially from it, right? What are the connections between these groups and organizations or individuals who would want to see them be seen as more legitimate and more in the mainstream? What are the connections between these groups and explicitly criminal enterprises? What are these people proposing to do to the people who they want to exclude from society? If there are policy proposals, especially policy proposals around immigration, like mass deportations from politicians who are engaging in far-right rhetoric, I mean, what does that actually look like? How is your plan going to shake out? What's it going to look like to deport millions of people from the United States? How are you even going to do that?
It's going to make America great again, Jason.
It may well, but there may be some snags along the way. So I guess I would say that like I am ultimately I'm system loyal, right? My politics are I'm acting in a way in defense of the status quo. Maybe I'm a conservative too, but what I'm saying, like that's what these people are doing. They're attacking democracy and they're trying to limit democracy, and a lot of them would like to do away with it altogether. And so, be adversarial. They are the adversaries of the foundations that journalism sits on top of. So it's simple in a way for me. And if that's the issue that you're talking about, and I suspect it is, that there's a misrecognition of what's going on here, and like an approach that seeks to see whether or not that this is a legitimate point of view that like might have a place in like liberal discourse or whatever. It's not. Like at a certain point, it's just not. I'm not talking about conservatives. I'm not talking about people who want to lower taxes. I'm not even necessarily talking about people who would want to vary the immigration policy, right? But at a certain point, you're getting into a politics which is authoritarian, anti-democratic, and illiberal, and sees journalism as its enemy. So if they see you as your enemy, their enemy, and you're not, and you're trying to accommodate that, well, I don't know. I don't understand that mindset, I guess.
I'm also thinking of the degree to which some reportage is a little superficial and displays a lack of familiarity with some of the groups and individuals and their histories, which would, if presented to the public in a more straightforward fashion, might engender both better understanding and an understanding of the seriousness of the threat, however marginal these groups and individuals may be at this stage.
Yeah, the worst stuff I've seen, and I don't know if this describes what you're talking about exactly, but it's stuff that treats these people as like a curiosity or quasi celebrities, as e-celebs or something, who are look, from an activist point of view, and I'm not an activist, from an activist point of view, like there may be value in mocking these people rather than portraying them as monsters. I don't know, but I don't think journalists should do that. And I think that you absolutely do need to know as much as you can about the context, about the connections between the different parts of this movement. I think there's a danger. Look, bless the sub-editors at The Guardian, but I've had some headlines at times where a term like Nazi or white nationalist has been used in a headline, and I don't write the headlines, and it has misdescribed the people who are in the story, right? You don't want to do that either, because it's really important to be precise and to know as much context as you can. And then I think that if there is a value in just pretty basic factual reporting of, say, legal cases or whatever, ongoing court cases which involve these folks, you should still know about them and their place in the movement to the extent that you can. But honestly, I mean, I think to me, and this isn't necessarily the fault of individual reporters, but organizations, if they're going to take on reporting on these folks, they need to make resources available for people to approach them with investigative reporting, because that's where you really get the wins, and you get the in-depth exposés of what these organizations are actually like and what these individuals have actually been up to, and because the problem, as you say, with superficial reporting is if you go get a comment from one of these guys about whatever their court case or what their politics are, they're going to be disingenuous. I mean, that's the whole thing, because radical right politics are still socially toxic for now in Australia or the United States. People don't call themselves Nazis, right? A lot of people don't even call themselves white nationalists when they are, although that's getting less radioactive for whatever reason. But yeah, like they've got an incentive to soft pedal their politics, to describe them in ways that aren't going to put ordinary people off. And the investigative reporters are going to be able to find out what they really say to each other behind closed doors, what their real political program is, where the money for that political program is coming from, like what kinds of things they're doing in order to advance it, what their relationships really are with ostensibly respectable institutions like law enforcement or political parties. All of that stuff is you've got to find out what's really going on. And so news organizations need to provide resources for that. But yeah, I mean, as far as individual reporters who don't necessarily have control over the resources go, I mean, just don't take them at their word and don't treat it like celebrity stuff or internet influencer personality stuff. It's because it's not that. That's not what they're up to.
Well, Jason, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming on the show. If people want to find you, you're out there, you're on The Guardian. If any hostile state actors have an October surprise,
they'll find my email address on my profile at x.com and Blue Sky. I'm Jason _A_W at X, although I'm not on there as much as I am on Blue Sky these days. What's my handle there? It's just Jason AW with no underscores.
But it's got to be a good scoop.
I don't know.
If a hostile state actor is going to contact you, it's got to be a scoop.
Well, if they want me to answer them, yeah. I don't want Iran spamming me.
No. Yeah, take me off your mailing list around. Andy, that's our show. We'll be back next week.
We will.
See you later.
She's a beacon of light, shining so bright. From the corns to the White House, she's always in the fight. A mother and wife, balancing life with grace and strength through every strife. She's a leader and friend on whom we depend, breaking barriers, her legacy won't end. From Oakland to DC, she's making history. Kamala, your stories are victory. Kamala, Kamala, you inspire us all. From the halls of justice to the nation's call. Kamala, Kamala, you're the light we see. A leader, a fighter for you and me. In the Senate she fought for rights that were sought, for the dreamers, the workers, and the battle she's fought. With wisdom and care, she's always there for the people, the nation, in every prayer. A voice for the voiceless, a heart so true. Kamala, we're grateful for all that you do. In the face of division, you stand with precision. Kamala, your vision is our mission. Kamala, Kamala, you inspire us all. From the halls of justice to the nation's call. Kamala, Kamala, you're the light we see. A leader, a fighter for you and me. In the Senate she fought for rights that were sought, for the dreamers, the workers, and the battle she's fought. With wisdom and care, she's always there for the people, the nation, in every prayer. A voice for the voiceless, a heart so true. Kamala, we're grateful for all that you do. In the face of division, you stand with precision. Kamala, your vision is our mission. Kamala, Kamala, you inspire us all. From the halls of justice to the nation's call. Kamala, Kamala, you're the light we see. A leader, a fighter for you and me.
Keffiyehs are Palestinian scarves, and they're a symbol of support for justice for the Palestinian people. From the traditional black and white keffiyeh to an array of modern designs, explore the range and order online or drop by 3CR during business hours. We're your support for the rights of Palestinians. Go to keffiyehs.org.au, that's KUFIYAS.org.au. A 3CR supporter.
Public transport's great.
What's not great is that unless you've got a radio with you, you can't listen to 3CR when you're on it.
Until now. The Community Radio Plus app lets you listen to us wherever you are.
Get on board and search Community Radio Plus wherever you get your apps.
Time's on my mind when I had you by my side. Am I thinking loud? Do I want to